Your players misunderstood a quest, set a town on fire, and now the villain thinks that they are his long-lost allies. You didn't lose control of the session. You just accidentally created one of the coolest storytelling tools in D&D. Some of the best stories in history don't feel like a carefully planned epic adventure. They feel like total chaos. But there's no good story that doesn't have any structure. There has to be a method to constructing this chaos. Think of some of the Shakespearean comedies where misunderstandings, mistaken identities, and the like turn the world upside down. Or Pirates of the Caribbean, where Jack Sparrow succeeds mostly by accident, but everyone looking on thinks he's some kind of genius.
That's got to be the best pirate I've ever seen.
So it would seem.
D&D can work the same way. And comedy in storytelling isn't just about, telling jokes or making things random either. It's about knowing how to make things seem like they're going wrong when in reality, everything is working toward an inevitable and hilarious resolution. Today, we are diving into one of the most underrated and underutilized storytelling structures in D&D, the comedy plot. By the end of this video, you will not only understand what the plot is and how you can create one, but you'll also learn how to save the day when things actually go wrong and turn that party chaos into an actual story that your players will talk about for years. I'm Josh, the Creator Bard. Welcome back to the tavern where we tell the best stories together. So I guess this is a great time to announce that I just launched my community Discord server. So if you guys love storytelling, role-playing games, or any of the various things I cover on this channel, go ahead and check that out. For one, it's a great place to get connected with other people in the hobby, and a fun, safe place for all of us to be nerds together. In addition, I'm on there, so it's a great place to get to know me a little better personally. And while I've got you here, go ahead and give me bardic inspiration. Like, subscribe, do the things. Back at it. So let's go ahead and get this out of the way. What is a comedy plot? The comedy plot is probably the most interesting plot we've covered so far because Christopher Booker, in the 7 Basic Plots Why We Tell Stories, tells us that it is the most unpredictable plot. And I don't just mean that there are plot twists and revelations that occur late game. I mean that we can't even really explain why the comedy came about. It is entirely different from all of the other structures we've studied so far because it really doesn't have a set structure. There's no formula for how to get a comedy plot. There are, however, several elements that make a comedy plot, and we'll talk about those here in just a minute. First, though, I'd like to say that comedy in storytelling isn't about humor. Well, I mean, it's not just about humor. We obviously do want it to be funny. It's about things going so wrong that they somehow work out in the end in the most bizarre way imaginable. But that only works because of that sort of almost hidden structure that we can see beneath the chaos, made up of primarily these 4 elements. First, one or more of the characters are trapped in a dark state. This tends to be a misunderstanding, a bad situation, a terrible assumption, something that lays on the character a bit of confusion, or a lot of confusion. Second, someone's true identity is hidden or unclear. You can certainly see why this would result in many, many ironies and hilarious situations. Lovers are uncertain or in some way divided. And fourth, families or groups are fractured. Now, you might be looking at these ingredients for the comedy plot and thinking, well, that doesn't seem very funny. That seems pretty tragic or serious. Or are you sure this is a comedy plot?
You sure about that?
But that's the point of comedy. It starts out in a way that seems and feels counterintuitive to the plot as a whole. It becomes this unpredictable thing that no one quite knows exactly how it's going to end until it does. And it typically starts with some pretty horrible circumstances. Think of classic comedies like Much Ado About Nothing or The Importance of Being Earnest. Okay, The Importance of Being Earnest is my absolute favorite comedy of all time. I laughed obnoxiously loud when I saw it performed. Obnoxiously loud. Characters overhear the wrong conversations, disguise themselves, or completely misread situations. And that is the foundation of comedic storytelling. But here's where that structure can come in. The elements don't happen randomly. You don't throw chocolate chips, eggs, flour, and baking soda. Baking powder? Baking soda. Baking powder? You don't throw those ingredients in a bowl and just expect cookies to come out. You put them in at the right time, you stir them, you melt the butter or soften it or whatever. It's been a long time since I've baked, okay? Cut me some slack. So it is with the comedy. You begin layering these things, escalating it, stacking one on top of the other, creating a domino effect that leads to a climax where everything blows up and then clicks into place. I'm sure you've all seen Mrs. Doubtfire. In that movie, Robin Williams' character disguises himself as a nanny to see his kids. This creates an escalated situation where the lie becomes harder and harder to maintain. By the time he's switching between disguises at a fancy restaurant, the entire plot has built to a hilarious and inevitable breaking point. Now, there are 4 ingredients that you can kind of throw together however you like, but here's a bit of structure that helps guide the way that you do it. Comedy comes typically in 3 phases. Now again, this formula isn't quite as rigid as the starting as a nothing to the dream phase to initial success to the escalation of an issue to the nightmare phase to the eventual success. I don't know if that was any of the plots I've said so far. I just kind of made it up. But this does give a bit of method to the madness. In phase 1, the world is in confusion, typically a little world. Comedies thrive in small communities, places like villages, a single manor, a small circle of friends. Now, everything starts in a state of disorder. People are acting on bad information, identities are mixed up, relationships are strained. A lot of sitcoms focus on this kind of thing in many, many episodes. For instance, that time in Friends when Ross insists, "We were on a break!" Mostly because communication wasn't happening properly. In phase 2, the chaos reaches its peak. The misunderstandings escalate and the pressure of the situation grows until no one is really sure what's actually happening anymore. For instance, in The 12th Night, the characters all begin kind of like falling in love with the wrong people because of disguises, and all of the characters individually think everything's going right, but the viewers, of course, are thinking, oh no, this is all going wrong. And in stage 3, the truth is finally revealed, but it doesn't happen easily. In a well-executed comedy plot, the solution isn't just handed over to the characters. They kind of have to stumble into it by accident. And when the truth finally is revealed, it typically results in the classic happy ending. For instance, in The Pirates of Penzance, when the pirates are all revealed to be orphaned noblemen and are forgiven by the Major General for all of their crimes, him pairing off his daughters with all of the ex-pirates, Frederick is reunited with Mabel, and all is well in the world. But boy, we had a time getting there. And this is something to remember when crafting a comedy plot. It doesn't have to end happily per se, but a common ending to the comedy plot when all the truth is revealed and the chaos is resolved is a resolution into a happiness. Everything is back as it should be. The story begins, everything is in chaos, it is not as it should be, the chaos escalates and escalates and escalates to a climax where everyone is confused about everything. Finally, the characters stumble across that last bit of information that puts all the puzzle pieces together, and things resolve to a happy ending where things have come full circle to where they should be. So, how do you use this in your D&D games? You can start by throwing in a bit of confusion. Confusion is always good in a comedy plot. I said that earlier, right? That's kind of what the video's been about so far. Throw in a bit of confusion. As a GM, set up a situation, or situations, as you would have it, where things are not as they seem. Let players make the wrong assumptions, and don't correct them right away. Perhaps your party goes into a village where people are being drained of blood. There's a character in the noble court named Lord Shadowfang. The players obviously will assume he's a vampire, but perhaps he's actually just a florist with an unfortunate last name, named after perhaps a magical flower in your world. He was given a noble title by the ruler of the land for the excellent work he did in creating bouquets and floral arrangements for the palace. But now he's freaked out because the party is kind of hunting him down as a vampire. Next, let the chaos escalate. In fact, try and throw in as much more chaos as you possibly can. Use those 4 ingredients we talked about earlier. Have NPCs get involved in ways that worsen rather than fix the situation. Lay bits of evidence about this Lord Shadowfang kind of all around. Bring in NPCs that distrust them. Perhaps even the real villain might be trying to pin it on this guy because of his unfortunate last name. Finally, reveal the truth. Bonus points if you do this through even more chaos. This resolution won't be clean. It happens through the players bumping into the truth through trial and error. Perhaps they're on their way to find the last piece of evidence to drive the nail in the coffin of this Lord Hollowfang. Or perhaps the wooden stake? When they find a crucial piece of evidence to say maybe it's the ruler of the land instead of Shadowfang. But they've already built a whole court case around this Shadowfang guy. The entire village believes it. The court believes it. Everyone is in full anticipation of what's about to go down when the players have to last minute say, we actually messed this up. It wasn't what we thought. It's this. Wait a second, Gus. I think I've seen this before. Yeah, literally like every episode of Psych. Now, to equip you to save the day and change absolute player chaos into a great story, look for the misunderstandings. Look for the times when your players miss the mark, when they totally go off the rails and do something you didn't expect. Don't say no. Don't come down on your players for doing this. Embrace it and look for a way to turn it back on them. I don't mean this in an antagonistic way. I simply mean learn how to escalate the chaos to drive more confusion until you can pull that into a climax. Perhaps the players did misunderstand the objective, then ended up raiding the wrong building, setting fire to the entire neighborhood, which extended into the village. The fire brigade had to get involved, etc., etc., etc. And that was the moment when you said the villain was wanting to destroy this village all along. Maybe not the BBEG, but a villain. Perhaps you just kind of make one up there in prep for your next couple of sessions. This villain perhaps says, they got to it first, they're now my enemies. Or this villain says, they did what I didn't have the means to do. I couldn't have done it, I would have gotten caught. I didn't have the right fire starters, I didn't have this, that. But you did. You've been helping me all along.
You showed me what was possible.
You showed me all it takes is fear and a little focused violence. You inspired me.
And then perhaps your party begins receiving gifts from a mysterious source. Perhaps they're given an invitation to a ball where all this can come to a head. Perhaps if the villain is powerful enough, he can even offer them a title. If they accept, perhaps unknowingly, they have agreed to become his lackeys and do his bidding. Maybe this inadvertently puts them at odds with an organization of which they're already a part. How do you see all of this chaos playing out? So when things go wrong, when players do things you didn't expect or want them to do, don't fret, the campaign isn't off its rails. It is just now part of a comedy arc. Because again, comedy in D&D and other storytelling mediums is not just about jokes or making things random. It's about misunderstandings, hidden identities, and absolute chaos that somehow works itself out in the end. But what about stories when things aren't meant to work out? What if instead of a happy resolution, you want to tell a story where everything falls apart? That's where the tragedy plot comes in a sort of mirror image to comedy, where characters spiral downward toward their inevitable downfall. If you, as a GM or player, want to tell a story as a campaign or through a character that is truly heartbreaking and unforgettable in D&D, you need to see this. Go ahead and click here to watch my breakdown of the tragedy plot and how it fits into your campaign. Or go here and watch all the videos I've made thus far on the 7 basic plots. That's it for now, guys. Till next time, gotta roll.